Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebeling, and today is April 10. It sure feels like spring. The light stays longer now. Afternoons warm fast. Coats come off before you quite trust it. And still, the mornings tell the truth. There's a thin rim of frost along the edge of the lawn, and your breath is visible when you step outside. It's false spring. Rhubarb pushing up as if it's decided. Daffodil tips green and certain. Pansies at the garden center. And you stand there, debating. Peas could go in. Spinach maybe. Some Aprils lean forward too quickly. A late snow, wind. So we wait. And we don't. Boots by the back door. Seed packets on the counter. One eye on the soil. And one eye on those nighttime temps. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1741 that the English traveler Celia Fiennes died. Celia's great project had been simple: to ride sidesaddle across every corner of England. Long roads, open weather, and no small undertaking for a woman who was orphaned young and battled epilepsy. Celia wrote, "I have resolved to travel into every corner." And she did. Not for bragging, not for novelty, but for herself. She wrote, "My journeys were begun to regain my health by variety and change of air and exercise. A body trying to feel better, a mind wanting more, and she kept riding." As a traveler, Celia had standards. Cleanliness mattered, a decent bed mattered, and a well-run town pleased her. She rode through England with a clear eye. She loved what was new, judged roads and trade, and measured whether a town was thriving or neglected. When she came to Nottingham, she called it the neatest town I ever saw. And when she came to gardens, she judged them the same way. Kitchen plots should earn their keep, orchards should bear well and be neat, and water should be managed and not wasted. At the top of her list was Chatsworth House in Derbyshire, where the waterworks astonished her. Engineering turned spectacle. There was a copper willow in a garden that would rain from every leaf. Visitors would wander close and suddenly be splashed to their delight. And if Celia's last name sounds familiar, it should. She belongs to the same family as the actor Ralph Fiennes. English lore has it that Celia may have been the inspiration for the nursery rhyme about a fine lady upon a white horse. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross, to see a fine lady upon a white horse, with rings on her fingers and bells on her toes. She shall have music wherever she goes. And it was on this day in 1854 that the American painter Mary Hiester Reid was born. Mary was a botanist's daughter. Her father taught anatomy and botany, so before she ever learned the language of art, she knew the language of flowers. Why veins branch, how petals attach, and the way a bloom opens and collapses back into itself. For Mary, a flower was never just a flower. It was structure, memory, and her childhood. Mary studied art at the Pennsylvania Academy, where the great Thomas Eakins, an uncompromising American realist, pushed his students to see their subjects with scientific precision. There, Mary met and married George Agnew Reid. He was gregarious, an academic, and a natural leader. Mary was quieter, private, and exact. George saw her as a peer and as immensely talented. He supported her in many ways, including building her a 2-story studio at their home at Upland Cottage. The windows in her studio brought in north light, steady and cool. and there was a second-floor balcony for stepping back so that she could better assess a large canvas. By 1890, Mary was considered Canada's most important flower painter, not merely because her flowers were beautiful, but because she painted them as if they had a soul. Flowers have a character of their own, she once said, just as much as people. Her passion was chrysanthemums. Something about all those petals captivated her, and she painted roses as if they had thoughts. But for most of her adult life, Mary's heart was broken, literally. Angina, breath shortening, energy thinning. In her day planners and calendars, she tracked only two things: how her heart felt and what the flowers were doing. On a single day, roses might open, a lily might drop its last petal, chrysanthemums might reach their peak, and then a note: heart steady today, or heart unsteady. Two entries, side by side, the only things that mattered to her. Mary's personal mantra was this: get cheerfully on with the task. If her heart hurt, paint anyway. If a bloom was fading, keep painting. No denial, just resolve. In the last 2 decades of her life, another painter, Mary Evelyn Wrench, came to live and work with the Reids. 3 artists under one roof. Unconventional, complicated, and somehow it made life easier for all of them. Late in life, Mary traveled to Spain and stood before the work of Diego Velázquez. His use of gray captivated her. Light dissolving form. After that, Mary started walking her garden at twilight. Soon, she mastered how to paint it. Silvery, misted, and tranquil. When Mary died in 1921, she was 67. She wanted George to marry again. She wanted her studio to endure. And she wanted her garden to go on. And it did, cheerfully, just as she asked. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear a poem from the Russian poet Bella Akhmadulina, born on this day in 1937. Bella became one of the most beloved voices of post-war Russia, known for her lyrical intensity and public readings that drew enormous crowds. Here's an excerpt from her 1962 poem, A Fairy Tale About Rain, translated by Kirill Tolmachev. Right from the morning, I was chased by rain. "Oh, would you stop?" I was demanding curtly. He would fall back, but like a little daughter, devotedly, would follow me again. Rain stuck to my wet back just like a wing. I was reproaching him. "Feel shame, you villain. A gardener expects you in his village. Go visit buds. What did you see in me?" The heat around was utterly extreme. Rain followed me, forgetful and unheeding. I was surrounded by the dancing children as if I were a watering machine. Then, acting wise, I entered a cafe. I sought protection of its walls and tables. Rain stayed behind the window, a panhandler, and through the glass pane, tried to find his way. Bella scolds the rain. She bargains with it. She hides from it. And still it follows. I've never read a more accurate description of a Minnesota spring. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Art of Pressed Flowers and Leaves by Jenny Ashmore. This book is part of Pressed Flowers and Garden Crafts Week here on The Daily Gardener. It's a week devoted to books that bring us hands-on creativity, where gardens are gathered, preserved, and brought indoors. Jenny doesn't rush you. She talks about walking out into the garden, not with clippers, but with this question: what is about to pass? Violets, she says, press beautifully. 2 weeks underweight, and they hold their color. Ferns take longer, 4 weeks, sometimes more. Patience is part of the process. But Jenny doesn't treat pressing as decoration. She treats it as preservation, a way of keeping what the season cannot. Jenny writes, "Pressed flowers capture time's pause." A pause, not perfection. Jenny presses seaweed gathered from a cold shore, oak leaves found on a walk, and forsythia clipped on an April afternoon before the wind takes the petals. There's mica dusted along an edge, ink tracing a vein, but always gently and never flashy. This is a book for gardeners who don't want the season to rush past them, who want to hold something flat and quiet and know that it was April. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1766 that the American botanist John Bartram finished his royal expedition through the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida, a long southern arc. Horseback, river crossings, magnolia cones tucked into saddlebags, live oak acorns wrapped in paper, and roots lifted carefully from warm soil. 1 year later, some of those same plants stood upright in another garden entirely. Peter Collinson, a London merchant and devoted plantsman, sat at Mill Hill outside London, the glass of his greenhouse holding the last of the evening light. Specimen boxes from Philadelphia lay open before him, straw pulled back, American soil still clinging to the roots. He dipped his pen and wrote to his friend John. Time-leaved kalmia, bog laurel, had flowered last summer and was thick with buds again. Sarracina, or pitcher plant, stretched toward the light. Spigelia, Indian pink, had rooted deep. Puccoon happened April 5th. Claytonia, or spring beauty, bloomed beside it. The letter wandered, as gardeners' letters do. Peter spoke of John's son William, of Florida land waiting, and of finding a good farmer's daughter. Plants and people braided together without ceremony. When the clock passed 10, Peter tried to end the note, and then he added more. He admitted he always meant to write briefly and never did. He signed the letter, "Good night, P. Collinson," and then a postscript. "Pray send specimen of bees flower." He wanted milkweed or Asclepias. As we close the show today, remember, April can feel convincing. Sun on your shoulders, soil soft at the surface. And then a night slips backward and frost threads the grass. Rhubarb keeps rising anyway. Daffodils hold the line. The garden leans forward, pulls back, leans again. And so do we. The fallen leaves and hollow stems still insulate the beds, small insects tucked inside, waiting for warmth. Cleanup waits a little longer. False spring is a rehearsal. The real thing is still coming. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.